Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. If you've been following the news lately, you know things are moving at absolute breakneck speed right now with the May 2026 conflict update. My goal today is to just cut right through the noise, leverage the data we actually have, and show you exactly what's happening with the sudden pause of a massive US military operation and what it means for both global security and, honestly, your own wallet.
So let's just jump right in. Literally 48 hours after launching a massive operation to pry open one of the most critical waterways on Earth, the US just hit pause. You've got to wonder, right? What exactly happened in that tiny 2-day window to pump the brakes on a mission of this sheer magnitude? To really grasp the stakes here, you have to look at the math. 20% of the entire world's oil flows right through the Strait of Hormuz. We're talking about a massive global artery squeezed into a choke point just 21 miles wide. And after the US and Israel kicked off Operation Epic Fury back in February, Iran essentially slammed that door shut. Boom. When you cut off a fifth of the global oil supply overnight, the whole game changes.
All right, Section 1, the immediate crisis, and why Project Freedom was paused.
Let's look at how fast this actually escalated. May 4th, President Trump launches Project Freedom. The goal? Use the US Navy to literally muscle commercial cargo ships through the strait. And hey, it worked at first. A Maersk carrier slipped out safely, but Iran fired right back. They launched cruise missiles, sent in drone swarms, and had these small attack boats charging the convoy. The US took out 8 of those boats, no direct hits taken, but man, by Tuesday, May 5th, the entire operation was abruptly put on ice.
Why the sudden stop? Well, the explanation came straight from President Trump. He pointed to requests from Pakistan, who, has been acting as a diplomatic middleman here, and mentioned they're making some progress toward an actual deal. So actively escorting these commercial ships is on hold for now. But, and this is absolutely crucial to remember, the U.S. naval blockade on Iranian ports is still 100% active.
Moving on to Section 2, the military reality out there, a very fragile ceasefire.
So this pause drops us into a super volatile gray zone. Technically, that April 8th ceasefire is holding. Technically. But there is a massive disconnect between the official line and what's actually happening out on the water. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is out there saying the ceasefire isn't over. Meanwhile, the reality? Iran has fired at commercial vessels 9 times and flat out hijacked 2 ships since this supposed ceasefire started. The Joint Chiefs are basically saying, look, we haven't crossed the line into full-blown hostilities yet, but we're dancing right on the razor's edge. Which brings us to today, May 6th. President Trump just dropped a very blunt public ultimatum. He stated that if Iran does not agree to a deal, the U.S. will go back to bombing and at a much, much higher intensity than before the ceasefire. Operation Epic Fury might be over on paper, but this new ultimatum makes it crystal clear. The military option is sitting right there on the table, locked and loaded if these negotiations fail.
Which takes us to Section 3, the diplomatic chessboard, and China's massive role in all this. Behind all these public military threats, there's a crazy, intense diplomatic game happening, and a giant wild card just dropped into the mix. Let's rewind the back channels for a second. April 11th, we had those grueling 21-hour marathon talks in Islamabad. The very next day, Vice President J.D. Vance announces that those talks failed because Iran wouldn't budge on their nuclear program. Bam! The U.S. naval blockade hits immediately after. Channels stayed open, sure, but just last week, the U.S. flat out rejected Iran's latest proposal. And here is where that wild card comes in. Today, Iran's foreign minister is sitting down with Chinese officials in Beijing. This is a massive development. Remember, China has been very publicly backing Iran's right to pursue nuclear energy. Plus, just last month, they teamed up with Russia to veto a UN resolution trying to secure the Strait. So having Beijing step into the ring right now is a critical piece of the puzzle, because all of this is laying the groundwork for something even bigger. The highly anticipated Trump-Xi summit on May 14th and 15th. This conflict is going to be front and center in that room. Is Beijing playing peacemaker to quietly broker a deal? Or are they just making things messier to boost their own negotiating leverage with the U.S.? Honestly, the fate of this whole conflict might literally be decided at that summit. All right, on to Section 4, the domestic squeeze, or basically what this means for your wallet. Let's bring this back home, because this geopolitical chess match is hitting all of us right at the cash register. With the Strait of Hormuz functionally closed off and 230 oil tankers just sitting there stranded, gas prices have gone absolutely wild. Back in February, we were looking at $2.98 a gallon. Today, It's 448. That is a brutal spike in barely 2 months. And here's the real reality check. Economists are saying that even if they sign a deal tomorrow and the Strait reopens, prices are probably going to settle around a really elevated 350 by the end of the year. And this energy shock doesn't just stop at the pump. It is rippling through the entire economy. Jet fuel is up over $2 a gallon, so airlines are immediately hiking up checked bag fees. Shipping giants like Amazon and FedEx are slapping on fuel surcharges. And because diesel is so expensive now, it costs way more to truck food to your local supermarket, which means your grocery bill is going up. Economists are actually sounding the alarm that key inflation could hit 4% by the end of 2026. Guys, that's double the Fed's target.
Let's pivot to Section 5. The squeeze on Iran, looking at the other side of the coin.
As much as we're feeling the pinch here, we have to look at the absolute economic devastation happening inside Iran right now to get the full picture. That ongoing U.S. naval blockade, it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, squeezing their economy to the breaking point. The local currency, the rial, has tanked to an all-time low. The minimum wage there has been crushed down to under $90 a month. Factory workers aren't getting paid, and the cost of basic food is just skyrocketing. This intense pressure is the absolute core of the U.S. strategy to force a favorable deal. But despite that crushing economic reality on the ground, their public face is a totally different story. Iran's new supreme leader recently came out and literally declared victory over the U.S., claiming total dominance over the region and the waterway. So publicly, total, absolute defiance. And because of this standoff, we are way past a regional conflict at this point. Between a badly damaged LNG facility in Qatar that could take years to repair, and major players like the US and Japan draining their strategic reserves, the global system is straining. The International Energy Agency isn't sugarcoating it. They are flat out calling this the greatest energy security challenge in history. No exaggeration. All right, Section 6, the path forward. So, to wrap up this explainer, what are the absolute must-know takeaways here? Let's zoom out. First, Project Freedom is on pause, but that U.S. naval blockade is very much active. Second, the ceasefire is hanging by a thread with attacks still happening. Third, circle May 14th on your calendar because that Trump-Z summit is a massive turning point for global diplomacy. Fourth, brace your budget. Gas is going to stay high at around that $4.48 mark. And finally, if they can't ink a deal soon, there is a very high risk that heavy fighting resumes. Which brings us to the ultimate question as we count down to that May 14th summit. With the blockade choking the economy, the world energy supplies strained to the absolute limit, and ultimatums flying, will diplomacy actually prevail in Beijing, or are the bombs coming back? Keep a close eye on those talks, because whatever happens in that room is going to shape the rest of our year. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.